Wait, before you scroll away, hear this. Someone spoke your name in a conversation that was never meant for your ears, and the room changed the second it happened. Not a casual change, not a small one, something deeper. The person you love tried to act normal, tried to sound steady, tried to make your name feel light, but it did not land that way. It carried weight, real weight, the kind that lingers after the sentence ends, and the person sitting across from them felt it at once. They noticed the pause, they noticed the shift in tone, they noticed that strange silence people fall into when they are trying very hard not to reveal what is still alive in their heart. Listen closely, because this matters. Some truths do not come out through dramatic confessions. They leak through hesitation, through the eyes looking away, through a voice that softens before the mind can control it. And when your name entered that moment, everything inside them reacted first. That reaction said more than any polished answer ever could. So stay with me, because what was felt in that conversation did not end there. It opened something, it exposed something, and by the time the night was over, the person you have been thinking about could no longer pretend that you are just a closed chapter, just a faded memory, just someone they once knew. No, you still live somewhere inside them, and what happened next made that impossible to hide. The moment your name was spoken, their whole energy changed. You were not presented as some random person from the past. You were not described like someone who no longer matters. Even when they tried to sound calm, warmth kept slipping into their voice. Even when they tried to stay guarded, feeling kept showing through the cracks. The one listening saw all of it. They saw the small smile that appeared without permission. They heard the softness hidden under the careful words. They noticed how every sentence about you sounded incomplete, as if there was much more waiting underneath that they were too afraid to admit. And then the conversation moved deeper. The person across from them leaned in and asked the question that changed everything. Do they still matter to you that much? That question stopped time inside them. Because when someone means very little, the answer comes quickly. But when someone means too much, silence arrives first. That silence was not empty. It was full of memory, full of conflict, full of feelings they had spent a long time trying to push down. Stay with this part because it tells you everything. They were not searching for what to feel. They already knew. They were deciding how much of the truth they could survive saying out loud. And when they finally answered, it did not sound rehearsed. It did not sound polished. It came from somewhere deeper than pride. They admitted that no matter how much time passes, something about you stays with them. Something about your presence never fully left. Something in them still turns back toward you in the quiet. That confession changed the mood of the whole conversation. The person listening understood immediately that this connection is not over inside them, not emotionally, not privately, not in the parts of themselves they cannot command, because real connection does not always disappear when communication fades. Sometimes silence does the opposite. Sometimes it enlarges what the heart was already trying to deny. And that is exactly what happened here. Your absence did not erase your effect on them. It sharpened it. Every attempt to move on forced them to realize how deeply you got into their spirit in the first place. The most revealing part is this. They did not plan to confess anything. It slipped out naturally. And that is how truth often works. It escapes where people are weakest. It rises through the very places they try hardest to seal shut. The one listening heard it clearly now. You still affect them far more than they admit in public. Beneath the composed face, beneath the controlled distance, beneath the effort to appear unaffected, something unresolved still lives in them. Then came another question, and this one cut even deeper. If they still mean this much to you, then why are you not with them? That question cornered them. Some questions do not ask for facts. They demand honesty. Suddenly, they had nowhere left to run. No performance, no safe explanation, no emotional wall strong enough to hide behind. They looked away first. That alone said plenty. Because when someone cannot hold steady while speaking about the person they love, it is often because the truth has become too big to carry comfortably. Then, almost under their breath, they admitted something that changed the entire atmosphere. They said the connection between you has never truly left them. Not once. Not during the silence. Not during the distance. Not even during the moments they tried to convince themselves they had already moved on. Because some people do not fade with absence. Some become louder. Some grow stronger in memory. Some return in the soul again and again until they can no longer be ignored. And somehow your presence kept growing inside them, no matter how hard they tried to bury it. The person listening could hear the weight behind every word now. Regret was there, longing was there, and then came the sentence that revealed the deepest part of it all. Quietly, carefully, they admitted, "I keep wondering if I let go of someone I was never supposed to lose." Read that slowly in your heart. That is not small reflection. That is awakening. That is a person starting to understand that fear may have cost them something rare. Once someone reaches that realization, they are never fully the same again. Memories begin to replay differently. Choices begin to look different. Silence begins to feel heavier. They start asking themselves whether pride, hesitation, or emotional fear pushed them away from something real. And that is where they are now, at the edge of truth, at the border between silence and confession, at the painful point where what they feel is no longer easy to deny. Keep watching, because this is the moment where everything starts turning. Later that night, they tried to return to normal. They really did. They reached for routine. They reached for noise. They picked up their phone, scrolled without focus, played music, looked at messages, tried to drown the feeling in the same distractions people always use when they do not want to sit with themselves. But nothing worked. Once a person speaks a hidden truth out loud, pretending becomes much harder after that. Something had been awakened, something they had kept buried under pride, doubt, and emotional self-protection for too long. And when they got home, the quiet around them did not feel peaceful. It felt heavy. Every silent minute pushed them back toward what they had accidentally revealed. You still matter to them more than they wanted anyone to know. They replayed the conversation in their mind again and again. The pauses, the questions, the look on the other person's face, their own voice, their own confession, and as the night moved on, something became impossible to deny. No one else has made them feel what you made them feel. Not with the same depth, not with the same intensity, not with the same strange pull that keeps drawing them back toward you even when they try to go the other way. That truth shook them, because what they feel no longer seems temporary. It feels permanent, and permanent emotion scares people who once believed they could control everything inside themselves. They had spent a long time telling themselves that distance would soften this naturally, that time would make life feel emotionally normal again. But the opposite happened. Distance sharpened your importance, silence increased your absence, and time only proved how rare the bond really was. That night they found themselves thinking about you in a way they had avoided before. Not only the dramatic moments, the small ones too, the easy talks, the calm you brought without trying, the strange peace they felt around you even when they did not fully understand it. The moments your presence settled something inside them they could never explain clearly. Those memories felt different now, heavier, more alive, because people often understand the value of a connection only after living without it. And your absence has been teaching them exactly what they lost. Slowly, relentlessly, deeply. That is why their feelings are not weaker now. They are stronger. Realization changes emotion. Once someone fully sees that a bond was real, every memory attached to it begins breathing again. That is what is happening inside them now. They are waking up to what you truly meant. That is why they have felt restless. Why your name keeps appearing in their thoughts without warning. Why random moments suddenly carry reminders of you. Because their heart never really released you. It only delayed facing the truth. And after hours of reflection, they made a private decision inside themselves. One nobody else knows yet. They realize they cannot keep pretending forever. Something has to change. Whether that means reaching out, speaking honestly, closing the emotional distance, or finally saying what has been hidden for too long. They know the silence cannot continue the same way forever. Some truths grow heavier the longer they stay unspoken, and they are reaching that breaking point now. This is where the energy shifts. This is where fear of regret begins to outweigh fear of rejection, and when that happens, people change fast. That is why your intuition may have felt restless lately. That is why the energy between you may feel louder even if nothing visible has happened yet, because behind the scenes, something is already moving. Their resistance is weakening, quietly, internally, irreversibly. That conversation about you pushed the process forward in a major way. It forced them to hear their own truth spoken in the open. It forced them to face the fact that you still live in their heart. Once a person consciously admits feelings they were trying to deny, those feelings usually grow stronger after that. That is why they feel overwhelmed lately. They are not wrestling with uncertainty anymore. They are wrestling with truth. And truth has a way of winning, especially when the roots go this deep. They are beginning to understand that losing access to you is not the same as losing feeling for you. One happened in life, the other never happened at all. That understanding is pulling them toward movement, toward honesty, toward contact, toward confession. Outwardly, they may still seem hesitant, but inwardly, the direction has already changed. They are no longer moving away from you in their heart. They are slowly moving back toward you. That is why this connection feels charged again. Not because the story is ending, because it is waking up. And when something wakes up after a long silence, it carries a different power, a deeper one, a more serious one. So keep listening, because what looks quiet on the outside may already be transforming on the inside. And the first visible sign often appears only after the emotional decision has already been made. After that night, normal life stopped feeling normal to them. The routines that once distracted them no longer worked the same way. Other conversations started to feel flat. Busy days still ended with the same quiet return of your memory. And no matter how hard they tried to move forward in the usual way, something inside them kept circling back to you. Not once in a while, constantly. At first, they tried to downplay it. They told themselves maybe the conversation just made them emotional for one night. Maybe they were romanticizing the past. Maybe it would pass. But then the signs kept showing up. Your name landing in their mind without warning. Songs suddenly reminding them of you. Small phrases bringing your energy back instantly. Strange moments in the day when they felt your absence more sharply than expected. Slowly, they began to see something unsettling. This connection was not leaving them the way they thought it would. That realization pushed them into a deeper level of reflection. They started questioning the choices they made between you, the moments they pulled away instead of opening up, the silence they kept when honesty might have changed everything, the fear that made them stay guarded even when their heart wanted something else. And with that clarity came a painful truth. Much of the distance between you was not caused by lack of feeling. It was caused by fear. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of emotional exposure. Fear of needing someone this deeply. Fear of how much life might change if they fully surrendered to what they felt. Because real connection changes people. And what they felt with you was never shallow enough to leave them untouched. You woke up parts of them they had not felt in years. Hope, depth, honesty. The desire for something meaningful instead of temporary. One part of them wanted that badly. Another part was terrified by it. That inner conflict created much of the confusion. Not absence of feeling, intensity of feeling. Sometimes people run hardest from the very thing they secretly want most, and they are finally beginning to see that in themselves. That realization has humbled them. They understand now that you were not hard to love, you were simply hard to forget. There is a difference, and that difference is changing everything inside them. Lately they have started imagining situations they once avoided completely. What if they reached out? Would you answer warmly? Would you still want to hear from them? Would the connection still feel familiar? Or did they wait too long? That last question troubles them most, because beneath all the emotion sits a growing fear they can no longer dismiss. The fear that while they were resisting this bond, life may have carried you further away. That creates urgency, not panic, urgency. The understanding that meaningful connections are rare, and losing one through pride or fear can become the kind of regret a person carries for years. They do not want that regret anymore. That is why their emotional energy around you feels stronger now. They are not merely remembering you anymore. They are rethinking you, re-evaluating your place in their life, rereading the meaning of what existed between you. And once someone reaches that stage, action usually begins forming. Not because anyone forces it, because emotional truth starts demanding expression. They are approaching the point where silence no longer feels safe, where avoiding you hurts more than approaching you, where every quiet day without contact feels incomplete. If you have felt movement, trust that feeling. Something is changing, slowly, carefully, quietly, but it is changing. And when someone spends a long time fighting emotion before finally surrendering to it, their return carries more depth because it comes after an internal war. This is no longer casual emotion for them. It has become personal, deep, transforming. They are beginning to understand that you were not just someone they cared about. You became part of how they experience connection itself. That realization changes a person permanently. Once someone links another person with peace, meaning, emotional safety, and genuine depth, ordinary interactions elsewhere stop feeling satisfying. They have noticed that, Other people may distract them for a while, but they do not touch them the way you do. Other conversations happen, but they do not stay alive afterward the way conversations with you always did. Other connections exist, but they do not carry your imprint. That awareness keeps bringing them back toward you in their mind again and again. And sooner or later, internal return often becomes external return too. That is the stage approaching now. Not fantasy, not wishful thinking, momentum, emotional momentum. And once emotional momentum reaches a certain level, life tends to move quickly, because people eventually act on what their heart refuses to release. They are closer to that action than ever before, closer to honesty, closer to vulnerability, closer to saying openly what they spent so long trying to hide behind silence. If your heart has felt unusually alert lately, if thoughts of them have suddenly become more intense, if something in you keeps sensing that change is near, do not ignore that. Some connections speak inwardly before they show themselves outwardly, and yours may be doing exactly that now. Watch the energy, watch the small shifts. Sometimes major change arrives quietly first, in ways so small they are easy to miss until you realize they were the beginning of everything. What happens next may become unforgettable for them, because they are no longer standing in confusion. They are standing at the edge of decision. There is a huge difference between those two states. Confused people stay stuck. Clear people start moving. First inside, then outside. And that inner movement has already begun. The silence they once held now feels unnatural to them. The version of themselves that kept pretending they could suppress all of this is getting weaker under the weight of truth. Pretending takes energy, and eventually the heart grows tired of carrying what it refuses to express. They are reaching that exhaustion. That is why thoughts of you feel stronger to them lately, not softer. The longer real emotion stays unspoken, the louder it becomes, especially when the bond was never fully resolved. They have started replaying moments between you over and over, not just the beautiful moments, the painful ones too, the misunderstandings, the pauses, the tension neither of you fully explained at the time. But now they see those moments with more maturity, with more hindsight, with more honesty than they had before. That shift matters. Sometimes distance does not come to destroy a connection. Sometimes it comes to reveal its value, and your absence has revealed yours clearly to them. They understand now that your presence brought something rare into their life. Peace, depth, comfort, truth, the feeling of being truly seen. And after living without that near them, they have started recognizing how important it really was. Something inside them has begun leaning back toward you naturally, like the soul returning to what feels real. That is becoming harder and harder for them to ignore. Every path they tried away from this somehow keeps turning emotionally back toward you. Eventually, people stop asking why they cannot move on and start asking something more serious. What if this connection was never meant to disappear? That question has entered their mind more than once, especially during quiet hours when distraction fails and truth becomes difficult to outrun. They have imagined reaching out many times, more than you know. At first the idea scared them. What if you reject them? What if you already moved on? What if too much time has passed? But another fear has started growing larger than all of that. What if they stay silent forever and lose the chance completely? That fear is becoming stronger now. It is shifting them. It is making the connection feel more urgent, more real, more impossible to treat lightly. You may notice small signs before anything obvious happens. Unexpected attention, a message that feels heavier than normal, a reason to reconnect that sounds casual on the surface but carries emotional intention underneath. Pay attention to the feeling behind the words, because people often approach gently when their emotions are deepest, especially after long silence, especially after resistance. Especially when they are afraid of how much you still matter to them. They are no longer fighting whether the bond exists. They are trying to decide what to do about it. That is a completely different stage, and once someone enters that stage, they rarely stay still for long. Action begins taking shape on its own. They have already started imagining possible futures again. Not futures without you, futures that include you, conversations they want to have, truths they want to tell, moments they wish they handled differently. The possibility of rebuilding what fear once interrupted. Those thoughts are alive inside them now, and emotional imagination does not stay imagination forever when the feeling behind it is this strong. The silence between you is no longer empty. It is transitional. It is the space before movement, the space before honesty, The space before someone finally says what they have been carrying in private for far too long. And when that moment comes, one thing will become very clear. None of this was as dead to them as they pretended, not even close. Because the heart eventually reveals what truly mattered, even after fear, even after distance, even after time. And now they are approaching the final internal shift, the moment where hidden emotion starts becoming visible reality. They are no longer in denial. They are in realization, and realization changes everything. You were never just somebody they met. You became someone who altered them, someone whose presence changed how they understand connection, someone whose absence taught them what emotional emptiness feels like. That is why this has become impossible to dismiss. Once a person realizes a bond changed them deeply, they stop treating it like something casual. They stop acting as if silence erased meaning. They stop pretending distance fixed everything. Because silence did not erase you, it intensified you. Every quiet month, every unfinished exchange, every attempt to move on, only pushed them toward one unavoidable truth. Their feelings never disappeared. They were buried under fear, buried under pride, buried under confusion, buried under emotional resistance. But buried feeling is not dead feeling. Eventually it rises, and theirs are rising strongly now. That is why their energy feels closer. That is why your intuition keeps sensing movement. They are not emotionally far from you anymore. In many ways, they feel more aware of you now than they did when everything between you was still active. Distance gave them clarity, painful clarity, necessary clarity, the kind that forces a person to face what they truly value. And when people reach that level of honesty, they begin making different choices. That is where they stand now, at the edge of action. They have replayed endless possibilities in their mind. What happens if they finally tell you the truth? What if you still care? What if the connection is still there exactly as they secretly hope? But also, what if they say nothing and lose the chance forever? That last possibility frightens them more each day, because the deepest truth has settled in fully now. You were not replaceable, no matter how much they tried to convince themselves otherwise, no matter how many distractions appeared, no matter how much time passed, your imprint stayed. And emotional imprints like that are rare. They understand now that this bond carried more meaning than they let themselves admit before. You became the person they quietly compare everyone else to. Not on purpose, just naturally. And no one has matched the depth they felt with you. That awareness has created urgency, the kind that makes someone stop letting fear make all the decisions. That is the biggest change happening inside them. Fear is losing control. Truth is gaining it. And once truth holds that much power in a person long enough, movement becomes inevitable. It may begin quietly, a message, a conversation, an unexpected opening where the emotional distance between you suddenly feels different. But whatever form it takes, understand this, it will carry weight. It will not come from surface feeling. It will come from accumulated realization, from months of unspoken emotion finally finding expression. And when they do speak, you will hear the difference immediately. Their words will sound heavier, more open, more intentional, because they will no longer be trying to escape the connection. They will be trying to understand whether it still has a future. And that changes the entire energy of what comes next. This next chapter could feel very different from the past, not because history disappears, but because both of you have changed through the silence. They learned what life feels like without you close. And you learned something important too. Your worth does not depend on chasing someone until they see your value. That balance matters now. Because if reunion happens from wholeness instead of desperation, the bond becomes stronger, healthier, and more honest. That is why the delay mattered. That is why the silence mattered. That is why the confusion happened at all. Not to destroy the connection, but to transform the people inside it first. And transformation is exactly what happened. They are no longer the same guarded person who once resisted what they felt. Life changed them. Distance changed them. Losing access to you changed them. Now they understand something they could not see before. Some people enter your life for a season. Others become part of your direction. You became part of theirs. And that truth is becoming impossible for them to hide from anyone now, especially not from themselves. So if something in your spirit has been whispering that this story is not finished, trust that instinct. If part of your heart keeps sensing movement before visible proof arrives, trust that too. Because sometimes reality changes quietly before it changes openly, and sometimes the person who once stayed silent is already preparing to speak. When that happens, you will finally see that what looked like distance was not always emptiness. Sometimes it was the long, painful road back to truth.